To say that things went wrong, I also think things went right. We made a lot of progress, but we also made very clear, and I think this is part of the progress we made, what the terms where the United States could make some accommodation, what terms we were flexible on, and what things we absolutely needed to see. And the big question from here on out is whether the Iranians will have enough flexibility, whether the Iranians will accept the critical things that we need to see in order for things to get done.
Vice President J.D. Vance earlier on the show. Let's bring in our panel. Start there. Fox News Chief Political Analyst Brit Hume, Harold Ford Jr., former Tennessee Congressman, co-host of The Five, Fox News Political Analyst Guy Benson, and Politico White House Bureau Chief Dasha Burns. Okay, Brit, on Iran, what did you take from the interview with the VP?
Well, the emphasis, I think, on J.D. Vance's part and in explaining the outcome of this on the nuclear emphasizes one key point. Here Iran is badly battered, militarily crushed. They really don't have any cards here, other than the Strait of Hormuz, which we're acting on now. And they come into this negotiation absolutely refusing to give up their nuclear weapon ambitions, which was the bottom line for the president and his negotiators. If that doesn't emphasize that President Trump was correct in assessing in the beginning of this, that Iran was still going for a nuclear weapon and it was something the world could not afford, then I don't know what could.
Yeah, Harold, I did not hear the next time they're getting together, whether he thought the Iranians were going to make another pitch. He's hopeful, but it's not definitive.
First, thanks for having me on. I agree largely with Brit, but I was slightly disappointed, not in what we're doing and the success of the blockade and the fact that we need to disarm and ensure that the Iranians don't have access to a nuclear weapon. I didn't hear a strategy, though, from the vice president. I thought it was curious, Brit, when he said he thought that they were inches away from making an agreement, yet he also thought that they had the wrong group in the room, that group had to go back and get approval for those things. Look, I'm hopeful that we must have an agreement. Not hopeful that we get an agreement. We have to have an agreement. He made it clear, though, and I thought the most important thing he said was that no possession of nuclear weapons, that all red lines flow from that. But I was a little disappointed not to hear the strategy going forward. Are we waiting for them? Are they waiting for us? What's the next step? I know the world is awaiting. And the president, who up to this point I think has done a great job. The blockade should get more credit. I hope NATO comes to our support in that effort. But the clear thing, the one thing that will make us victorious here is that we ensure that the Iranians do not have uranium to enrich to affect us or affect our allies in the region.
Dasha, what do you think the hope is at the White House about the blockade and that it changes the dynamic?
I think that's exactly right. I think the White House is trying to take away the leverage that Iran believes it has, the leverage that it has projected onto the world. You know, the challenge, and I think the vice president laid it out a little bit in the interview there, is this threshold for pain that Iran does have. This is existential for them. And he took on an enormously difficult task with these negotiations, because what I'm hearing from sources close to the White House is that the maximum that Iran is willing to give does not meet the minimum that the United States is willing to accept. And the vice president mentioned inches. Well, those can really feel like miles when you are in a room with a state that has everything and that has very little to lose compared to the United States.
Yeah, Guy?
Well, Brett, I think that what we're seeing from the United States now and President Trump and now our military naval blockade of Iranian ports, that will have a devastating impact on Iran's already battered economy and therefore the regime that's already in deep trouble with its people because, in part, those economic realities. It also could have a significant pain point or two for other countries, including very much the Chinese, the Pakistanis, the Turkish government as well. General Jack Keane was making this point on my radio show earlier. Those countries might at some point start ramping up the pressure on Iran to say, you better start relenting on some of these major points from the Americans. I think that's part of the hope here, as we've heard at least an indication from the president that the Iranians want to talk again. But it comes back to Brit's initial most important point when you zoom out. With its back against the wall, and its leadership largely decapitated, and it's like next man up, so many of their sites destroyed by our military, This is a regime that remains implacably and fanatically committed to a nuclear weapons program. And I think it only underscores how insane it would be for us to allow that eventuality to occur. And that was the reason, that was the triggering cause to have this operation in the first place. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we zoom in, to also keep a broader picture of why we're doing this in the first place.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any movement going to another negotiation in Islamabad or elsewhere. Britt, I also asked about this back and forth with Pope Leo, what the Pope said about Iran and the war, what the president posted, and then this picture that got a lot of response all over the internet, even from Trump supporters, and significant ones. Ari Fleischer tweeted out about this picture, said it's inappropriate. President Trump's team should never have posted this image. If he saw it first, he should never have approved it. It's inappropriate, embarrassing, it's offensive. The president said he did post it. He had a different definition for it. I asked the vice president about that, and here's part of that answer.
I have no fear of neither the Trump administration nor speaking out loudly about the message of the gospel. And that's what I believe I am called to do, what the church is called to do. If we're not politicians.
It really caused a kerfuffle, Mr. Vice President. I'm just wondering what you make of all of this.
He took it down because he recognized that a lot of people weren't understanding his humor in that case. I think the President of the United States likes to mix it up on social media. We can respect the Pope. We certainly have a good relationship with the Vatican, but we're also going to disagree on substantive questions from time to time. I think that's a totally reasonable thing. It isn't particularly newsworthy.
Britt.
Well, Brett, I think we can add a couple of codicils to what we know about the rules of politics. One of them is don't pretend to be Jesus, and the other is don't get into an unnecessary fight with the Pope. I think the president may have a point about the Pope, but the way he expressed it, I think, was unfortunate. And the Pope has, a world of admirers, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of those. It doesn't do you any good, and it may do you harm.
Harold?
Reverend Billy Graham had great relationships with American presidents and helped them find faith and find answers through the gospel. I think the president, it was just a bad joke. And the vice president should have just said that as a Catholic. The president has a way of doing these things and saying these things, and we give him a lot of latitude, but this was just a bad and futile attempt at poking fun at something, whatever it was he was trying to poke fun at. And I agree with Britt. Don't get into a fight with the Pope. You're not going to win.
We'll see where this goes from.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.